Every great Italian restaurant has baskets bursting with breadsticks, softball-sized meatballs, and pizzas dripping with cheese, right? Wrong. But those aren't the only red flags when getting your Italiano on. You have likely seen countless red and white checkered tablecloths in Italian-American restaurants, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when they're made out of plastic, that could be a red flag. If so, you might want to head for the door. Not only do they look and feel tacky, but owners that don't invest in nice decor probably neglect the food too. Now, that's not to say that red and white checkered tablecloths can't be an indicator of good Italian food, especially when you're looking for a hearty plate of lasagna or veal parm. So don't let the initial sight deter you, but check to see if they're made from linen. Many Italian-American restaurants use these tablecloths in their decor, along with carafes of olive oil on the tables, as symbolic elements that create associations with Italy. We appreciate the efforts, as long as the effects are homey and authentic and not tacky. Would you order Chinese food if you saw it on the menu at a Mexican restaurant?
See?
Okay, maybe someone would, but for most of us, it might raise some eyebrows. Imagine sitting down at an Italian restaurant, opening up the menu, and seeing steak frite as an entree. Look, it's fine to have a burger and fries or mac and cheese on the kids' menu, but there better darn well be spaghetti and meatballs on there too. The truth is, you won't see other cuisines on menus at the best Italian restaurants. In fact, if you're in Italy, most authentic restaurants will only have menus printed in Italian, as English translations on the menu are a sure sign of a touristy restaurant. Photos of the food on the menu are another red flag. The pictures are designed to show tourists what the food looks like. True Italians don't need that extra information, and much of the time the food will look different than pictured. And if you're being really picky about authenticity, you won't want to eat at Italian restaurants with menus that are heavy on Italian-American food. Believe it or not, heavy dishes like chicken parmesan were not created in the old country, and fettuccine alfredo is only found in 2 restaurants in Rome, even though it's popular in the US and other countries. A good Italian restaurant will have most of its tables filled during weekday lunch and dinner hours and have lines or require reservations on the weekends. And when the food is served in large portions and/or family style, you can expect plenty of noise and camaraderie. However, when you're the only table or there are 1 or 2 others, you might feel awkward and realize that business might not be exactly booming for this poor restaurant. Staff shortages are another red flag that a restaurant may be having problems. If you're waiting around for an eternity for someone to uncork your wine or serve your entree, there may only be 1 server and 1 chef. Once this happens, rest assured the food quality will not be that great either. The Washington City paper points out that many restaurants also face hard times because of rent increases and oversaturation, which happens when too many similar restaurants exist within close proximity of one another. So it may not always be the food quality that's the problem. Some try to survive by offering patron discounts like 2-for-1 pizzas and free appetizers with entrees. This doesn't mean that all special offers are red flags, though. A fine Italian restaurant might offer lunchtime or weeknight discounts, but you won't see major deals on the weekends. Consistently empty tables and poor service are red flags that an Italian restaurant may soon be shuttering its doors for good. If you sit down at an Italian restaurant and your server doesn't greet you like this,
This is the most beautiful table I have ever seen. You take my breath away. Oh.
stand up and walk out immediately.
I'm just gonna go home and have a salad.
Oh, Dio mio.
Okay, but in all seriousness, while a sure sign of an authentic Italian restaurant is staff members who speak Italian or have Italian accents, it's not a necessity. In actuality, what's most important is an understanding and passion for the food and ingredients. Have you ever asked a server a question about a nightly special only to have them look confused and tell you that they'll be right back? Italians are passionate about their food, so the chefs should be able to share those feelings with their waitstaff. Good servers are familiar with new and older menu items, are thoroughly briefed on the daily specials, and share their enthusiasm about the food. They should be willing and able to answer specific questions about the food and not become frustrated when a diner has a complaint. When you walk into a great Italian restaurant, the aroma should be pleasing rather than offensive. Red flags like burnt pizza, cleaning chemicals, and rancid food are clear indicators that something might be amiss, for pretty obvious reasons. Chronic bad smells can develop when restaurants aren't cleaned often enough. But if it's an isolated incident like burned food, attentive staff members will remedy the situation and things will smell better soon enough. So what should you be smelling upon entering a good Italian restaurant? Well, the smell of garlic, fried meatballs, homemade soup, onions, and basil is definitely a good sign. And if the restaurant has its own bakery, all the better, as you'll be taking in the aroma of pizzelles and other goodies. You should notice some of these when you walk in, especially if the kitchen is near the entrance. It's totally fine for Italian restaurants to have pizza on their menus if that's what you are craving. Some Italian restaurants specialize in it, while others don't. But if you're seeking honest-to-goodness Italian pizza the way they eat it in Naples, then don't go in expecting your average American-style pie. Authentic Italian pizza is thinner than American pizza and is not covered in as much cheese. Thrillist shows that some classically trained Italian chefs have unpleasant things to say about Americanized pizza. Simona Falco owns Rosso Pomodoro and Simo pizza restaurants and claims that some pizzerias cut corners by adding sugar and using unripe tomatoes. Pizza is a serious business for Mr. Falco, and he takes considerable pride in the ingredients that go into his pizzas. For example, he allows his dough to rise for as long as 36 hours before it's baked. Why exactly? Well, when the yeast in the dough isn't given enough time to ferment, the yeast expands in your stomach. That and adding too much salt can leave you feeling very thirsty after you're finished eating, which is a red flag for inferior pizza. So if an Italian restaurant is selling dollar slices, you will be getting what you pay for. Major pizza chain restaurants like Pizza Hut are not considered to be authentic Italian restaurants, of course, but if you want traditional Italian pizza, avoid major chains and the buck-a-pop shops. A fine Italian eatery will have ungreasy, gourmet, and appropriately priced pizzas. Italian cuisine is all about using fresh seasonal ingredients, so if the menu is the same year-round or older than your grandma, walk away. You can taste the difference when Italian chefs use a lot of canned and frozen ingredients. Plump tomatoes and tender zucchini are two signs of real Italian food because peak ripeness equals better taste. And the flavor isn't the only reason fresher is better. According to Seasonal Food Guide, seasonal produce is prepared not long after it is harvested, and this supports local farmers and local economies. Seasonal foods are also more nutritious than out-of-season and packaged or processed products. Nourish by WebMD adds that seasonal foods not grown in bulk are more nutritious. That's because growers often use additives that can affect the taste and nutritional benefits of their produce. Vegetables and fruits that are allowed to grow naturally thrive on their own. And since they taste better, you'll want to eat more. So, if you're not sure if an Italian restaurant is using fresh seasonal ingredients, you might want to ask. Tennis ball-sized meatballs can be tempting, but they are totally unauthentic. Traditional Italian meatballs are smaller, and we see no reason to mess with perfection. Think about it. Is that giant round thing sitting on your pasta 100% beef? Nope. It's probably all fluffy and loaded up with fillers like cheese and breadcrumbs. So if an entree contains 3 or fewer oversized meatballs, you will likely be eating less meat and more filler. Traditional Italian meatballs are known as polpettes and are usually no larger than golf balls. They're made with many kinds of meat, including fish, and are eaten plain or in soups. But wait, is spaghetti and meatballs an authentic Italian dish? Smithsonian Magazine claims that it isn't found in Italy at all. So where did it come from then? Well, after Italian immigrants started arriving in the US in the late 1800s, they started consuming more meat and pairing it with red sauce and pasta. Italian Villa Restaurant agrees that Italian immigrants invented the dish, but since they were living in the US at the time, spaghetti and meatballs is definitely an Italian-American creation. We won't go so far as to red flag the dish, but you should definitely avoid any oversized meat monsters. You can buy a box or bag of dried pasta at any grocery store, so why order the same kind of thing at an Italian restaurant? Homemade pasta can be fresh or dried, but is always made with healthier ingredients. In addition to being healthier, homemade pasta has a better taste and texture, as well as no additives. Dried pasta is firmer and it pairs better with thicker, saucier dishes like lasagna. You'll notice that fresh homemade pasta is used more often in oil and cream-based dishes. Homemade pasta is made from flour and eggs. If it's dried, it contains no eggs and semolina flour is used. Fresh homemade pasta is lighter than dried pasta and only lasts for 2 to 3 days. But if you want to keep your homemade pasta longer, it can be frozen. You will pay more for handmade pasta at an Italian restaurant, but boy, is it worth it. Most of the time, the menu will indicate that the pasta is made by hand, or your server will tell you. What could be better than homemade fresh ravioli stuffed with cheese and other fresh ingredients? Italian-American restaurants often have overfilled bread baskets sitting on their tables, whether you ask for them or not. Olive Garden, in particular, is known for its never-ending breadsticks, which are anything but stick-like. They are served hot right out of the oven, and no one can deny their deliciousness. However, truly authentic Italian restaurants tend to have grissini instead. These slim sticks break when you bite into them because they aren't fluffy or doughy. They're much lighter than breadsticks and won't fill you up. This makes a lot of sense when you want to have enough room to enjoy your appetizers, entrees, and desserts. If you really want to eat like an Italian, you won't have any bread before dinner at all.
Of all the places we visited in Italy, what meal does this most remind you of?
This doesn't remind me of any meals.
That's because other kinds of bread and rolls are usually eaten during the meal, not beforehand. If bread is listed as an appetizer on the menu, that's an exception. Italians also don't dip their bread in olive oil or butter, so go ahead and enjoy Olive Garden's breadsticks with butter.
Can we have the butter with the breadsticks, like a load of butter?
Extra butter.
It actually says that on the menu.
But don't be surprised if you don't find a basket of breadsticks waiting for you when you sit down at an authentic Italian restaurant. We have nothing against sprinkling Parmesan cheese on Italian entrees, but we might recommend you consider grating the genuine article over your food as opposed to powdered Parmesan if you can. Kraft 100% grated Parmesan cheese has real cheese, but it also contains cellulose powder and potassium sorbate. But if you see powdered Parmesan on the table at an Italian restaurant, who knows if it's real? For all you know, it could be a fake product that's mostly made of oil, which is not ideal. Freshly grated Parmesan is so much better, and it's a real treat when servers do this tableside. Besides just being fresher, it's less likely to clump up in recipes and on top of food. It also melts better, so it will integrate well into hot dishes. Parmigiano Reggiano and Parmesan cheese are two different types of cheese, so if you want to get super picky about your Parmesan, ask if the cheese is Parmigiano Reggiano PDO. Champagne and Parmigiano Reggiano are both controlled origin products, so the names cannot be used on other goods. Real Parmigiano Reggiano is labeled as PDO or Protected Designation of Origin. Things labeled as Parmesan cheese are not regulated, so you never know what you might get. Have you ever ordered a pasta dish in an Italian restaurant only to find out that the sauce was ladled on top without care? Yep, that's a big red flag. This is a familiar way of serving pasta in Italian-American restaurants, but it's never done this way in Italy. When freshly drained hot pasta is added to a sauce, starch is released from the pasta. This binds the sauce to the pasta so that neither is overwhelmed by the other. Chefs in Italian restaurants who ladle globs of sauce on top of pasta won't achieve this balance. Italian sauces should always be combined with pasta before it is served, and experts explain how easy it is to do at home. When the sauce is cooked and simmering, add in hot cooked pasta and mix gently for 1 to 2 minutes. If the mixture becomes too thick, you can add a bit of the leftover pasta water to thin it out if necessary. When you have it prepared this way in an Italian restaurant, you will never see a pool of extra sauce in the bottom of your bowl or plate.